Go with me to Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Now the earth was without shape and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the watery deep, but the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the water. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God said that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. And he called the light day and the darkness night. There was evening and there was morning, marking the first day. God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate water from water." So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. It was so. God called the expanse sky, and there was evening and there was morning a second day. God said that the water under the sky be gathered in one place, and let dry ground appear, and it was so. So God called the dry ground land, and gathered waters he called seas. God saw that it was good. God said that the land produce vegetation, plants yielding seeds according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seeds in it according to their kinds, and it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants yielding seeds according to their kinds, and the trees bearing fruit with seed according to their kinds. God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning a third day. God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be signs to indicate seasons and days and years. And let them serve as lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule over the day and the lesser light to rule over the night. He made the stars also. God placed the lights in the expanse of the sky to shine on the earth, to preside over the day and night, and to separate the light from the darkness. God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning the fourth day. God said, "Let the water swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky." God created the sky. God created the great sea creatures and every living and moving thing with which the water swarmed, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." There was evening and there was morning the fifth day. God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, cattle, creeping things, and wild animals, each according to its kind," and it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, and the cattle according to their kinds, and all the creatures that creep along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And then God said this, "Let us make humankind in our image, after our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move on the earth." God created humankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and every creature that moves on the ground." And God said, "I now give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the entire earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will all be yours for food. And to all the animals of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. There was evening and there was morning the sixth day. The heavens and the earth were completed with everything that was in them, but the seventh day God finished the work he had been doing, and he ceased on the seventh day of all the work he'd been doing. God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he ceased all the work that he'd been doing in creation. This is the account of the heavens and the earth, that they were created when the Lord God came and made the heavens and the earth. Now, no shrub of the field had yet grown on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprouted, for the Lord God had not caused it to rain on the earth. And there was no man to cultivate the ground. Springs would well up from the earth and water the whole surface of the ground. The Lord God formed the man from the soil of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. God, we thank you so much for an account of the beginning moments and days of the seed of humanity. We're so grateful that we bear your image, and ask that you would help us to explore what that looks like and how to best activate that in 2013. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, welcome to Mosaic. We're so glad to have you. My name's Hank, and it's good to see you here. I'm one of the pastors here, and we're in a conversation, as you can tell, about how you and I are created and made in the image of God. Maybe if nothing else, if you sitting here in your seat this morning came just so that you could hear, amidst all of your questions or concerns about your identity, or all of your thoughts about your identity, or the certainties you carry about who you are, you could just hear that you were created in the image of God. that you bear the image of God and are entrusted with the image of God in your life and in your soul. That you carry the image of the creator of the earth above all things we see in the world and all the creatures moving on the ground. You and I carry with us an image of our creator. It rests deep inside of our souls, and it makes you and it makes me infinitely valuable. Because there's no way that God would create beauty and everything in creation and then give you his image to carry and bear and not mean that you would be extraordinarily valuable. That you wouldn't be the pinnacle of his creation. That when he breathed the breath of life in you and gave you his image, you were entrusted to carry his image throughout your life. So maybe for you, that's just a moment for us to pause and go, you bear God's image. But have you ever had a feeling like the English language is insufficient? Anybody ever had that feeling? Where you go, there's other languages in the world, on planet Earth, that are actually more diverse and might even have more of like a prism type thing. It's just hard to translate everything to English. Anybody ever had that trouble? My wife's family is Korean, and so sometimes we'll be driving in the car, and my wife and her family will share just a word. Everything else is English, and then they'll say a Korean word, and I'll go, and they'll all start laughing. And I'm like the guy sitting in the car going, okay. And I'll just say, what's that word? Are you making fun of me again? Because that's what I assume. If the conversation quickly shifts to Korean, it's usually about me. So I just said, what is that word, or what are you saying? And they'll all laugh and just kind of, it'll get quiet, and they'll go, oh, there's not really like an English translation. Oh, okay, cool. I'll just keep driving and paying for lunch and stuff. Don't worry about me. Like, it's fine. I don't need an explanation or whatever. It's cool. And then they'll go on and go, oh, yeah, we feel bad. Okay. And then they'll explain like a paragraph full of things for one word. You ever feel that way? Like sometimes you just go, man, there's things that I feel it takes a whole paragraph to say. The English language, sometimes so disappointing. It gets me really frustrated at the Queen because she created a language that doesn't hold the prism of all the other languages in the world. As much as the world is moving towards English, we're going to lose some things if that's the case. We're going to lose some texture to that. It's the same with the scriptures. In this account was, the original manuscript is in Hebrew. And I don't think you need to know Hebrew in order to understand the scriptures or understand this account, but some of the words in here in Hebrew matter a lot for you and for me. Because the English language, it stumbles over some things and gets a little awkward and uncomfortable. There are 3 words used to describe life, spirit, breath, and living being that you and I would go, oh yeah, living beings and life and spirit and breath, those are probably all synonyms. Those all kind of work. But in Hebrew, they carry a significance to you and me that's really, really important. So I'm going to break these down, and we're going to go through a few Hebrew words. You good with that? Yeah, okay. So what I've got here is I asked for a whiteboard, and they got me a clear one. This was Emerson's build, so I love it. He loves this stuff. So here's the deal. The best way to describe this account that we just walked through is this. What we're going to do is just imagine yourself as like an oak tree. Just personify that for just a second. Just take a deep breath. You're a huge oak tree. If you cut an oak tree through the middle, you begin to see the concentric circles of its age and how it grows. This is a deep core dive of you. The middle one would be this. This is a word called ruach. Everyone say the word ruach. And it's like, it's not like ka at the end, it's like a, you know? Careful with the person in front of you for that sound. Say the word ruach. Ruach is the word spirit. Ruach is in verse 2, where it says the Spirit of God hovered over the waters, and then the breath of God. It's the Spirit and breath of God that moved. The Ruach of God is something that sets inside you. It's what's moved and moved the whole world to life. It was the Spirit of God that moved on the earth. He didn't walk on the earth and use his hands. He didn't shape water and earth and everything with his hands. He did it with his Ruach, because it was the force of who he was. And he placed that ruach inside you and me, which is why David in Psalm 51 says, when he's confessing to God because of his sin, says, Lord God, take not your ruach from me, but restore the right ruach in me. This is the part of you that is kind of hard to describe. Have you ever seen a film, or have you ever been someplace and you found something that hit you so deep and so central, you had a difficulty articulating it with words? You ever have something, or you ever care about somebody so much in your life that you just have difficulty explaining because there's some part of you that is so deeply connected to them, you can't articulate it. And a person, it looks foolish how committed you are to that person, or how you work for years and years and years to try to communicate with your actions and with your life how much that person means to you. This is your ruach. Have you ever been in a place where you were just overwhelmed with life? You're overwhelmed with disease or sickness or shame, but you felt like a force inside you that was like a strength or like a battery cell that was pulsating. That's your ruach. It didn't even make sense. You could be bankrupt, you could be diseased, you could be sick, you could have everything going against you, but you have something pulsating saying you're still alive. That's your ruach. That's your spirit. But on the flip side, have you ever been in a situation where you felt like something in your spirit just lost hope? You ever been someplace or in some relationship where you just go, I can't articulate it, but I feel like I've lost my desires. I feel like I've lost my battery pack. I just feel low. I feel weak. I feel broken. You ever been there? That's describing a part of you that is your ruach. That's describing the central part of who you are. The next phase out of that is another one called neshama. Everyone say neshama. Neshama would be best described as ruach is described as your spirit. Neshama would be described as your soul. Neshama is a word used when he describes that then he breathed the breath of neshama in him. When God breathed the breath of life in Adam, the breath of life in you, he breathed a soul into him. Different than any living being in all of creation, you and I possess a neshama. So I hate to break it to you, if you have like a pony or a puppy named Cuddles, it's really good that you love your pony or you love your puppy named Cuddles, but your puppy does not have a neshama. Human beings alone were the ones that were given a neshama in your soul. Your neshama is what's inside of you that experiences the most articulatable things in life. Your frustrations and your anger, your heartbreak and your hopes, your joy and your pain, your excitement and your grief is carried in your neshama. Your ruach would be the deepest, most central, but your neshama would be the part of your soul that other people experience. You ever get a vibe about somebody? Your vibe about somebody is most likely their neshama, where you just go, I'm experiencing something about them. You ever have a person walk up next to you and you just immediately got the chills? You didn't know why? Nope, just me. Yeah, you got that, okay. Like I've literally been in places and I'll be sitting at a counter or something, ordering coffee. A person will walk up next to me and I'll just get the chills. Like literally to the point where I need to like back off because there's something about them that just scrapes against me. There's something about them they're carrying that whatever sensitivities I have is going, this is not good. But you ever have somebody on the opposite spectrum where they like walk into a room and you're like, there's something magnetizing about this person? I'm just going to go stand near them and hope it rubs off. They're like making deals or making it rain or they're awesome. They're every guy in every like romantic comedy. Do you know what I mean? Where they like paint this guy as like the perfect, he's got like an awesome neshama. A person's neshama is like the part of them that, it's the part of your spouse that you fell in love with. Your love for them could move to a place where it's actually connected to your spirit, but that's rare. Your neshama is the part where you said, we are soulmates, where we connect to each other. That third piece, and that third place, is actually the last phrase, which is nefesh. Everybody say nefesh. Nefesh is your being. So in that last verse where it says, and he made them living beings, he's saying they made them living nefesh. Your nefesh is what we can experience of each other that's really easy. It's the physical, it's the personality, it's the words you say, it's whether or not you're right or left-handed or if you like broccoli or not. That's all connected to your nefesh. You're actually, if you just glance around the room, you're seeing a lot of nefesh in this room. Some people could hide it really well and just be like a non-factor or like just a cone. But the reality is your nefesh is actually pretty easy to spot. So do this for me. Just turn to the right or left, person next to you, and just say, your nefesh is looking wonderful today. Yeah, you have a great nefesh. And the appropriate response to that is thank you. I don't know if you, just in case, that's not, no restraining orders necessary. Because I think what's important about this is that the description of us being a living being and having a spirit and having a soul is awesome. But when you and I are aware of the fact that we're made in the image of God, That sounds like such a lofty, high place, doesn't it? You're made in the image of God. It's like, okay, cool. Then that means God has 2 hands and 2 feet. And that means he probably walks on those 2 hands and 2 feet, and in some cases, they might even be considered a man, since the root word for human would be man. So, yeah, okay, that's the image of God. So we look kind of like God. When in reality, the scriptures are describing that you and I have within us a nefesh, a neshama, and a ruach that bears the image of God. That you carry in the deepest plates of who you are the double helix of the DNA of God inside you. Your soul, whether it experiences great joy or great disappointment, carries with it the soul of God and the image of God in you. Oh, and by the way, your being and who you are and how you behave and how you act carries with it a root DNA of who God is too. That we bear his image at both the deepest and most secret places of us. But we bear his image at the largest and at the most obvious places of us too. But in a perfect world, you and I would start walking around and we would just look like God all the time. Things would just be peaceful and we would be awesome and you'd never get angry or short-tempered. You'd never do anything selfish or you'd never do anything that you wished you hadn't. You would just kind of move on in life and we would all look like God. Doesn't that sound like the world we live in? Doesn't it sound like if you and I are made in the image of God, wouldn't we just walk around and there would be peace everywhere and love everywhere and joy everywhere and we would just kind of be, it would be like a cosmic high five, wouldn't it? We'd just be walking around in our awesome, showing our neshamas to everybody and going, isn't this great? My soul is open to you because you would never hurt me because your nefesh is God's image and you would never hurt, you'd only love, you'd only bring peace, you'd only bring joy. But it's not really the world I live in. How about you? The problem that happens to us is that our dilemma becomes that even though we're made in the image of God, and this is our sort of core sample, there's bark on the outside of our oak trees. It's like thick and heavy and maybe even like a little bit of fungus, depending on how far you want to go with your forest analogies. Because we choose things. We choose things like greed. And that destroys the image of God in us. It hides it. It's like having a pure form of something and then throwing in greed into the blender and mixing it up, and now all of a sudden it all tastes weird. We choose things like foolishness. And that foolishness makes decisions that are constantly made that you go, God would never make that decision, but I'm not God. I bear his image, but I do stupid stuff. We choose things like bitterness. And in that bitterness, we choose to actually root inside of us something that will break us at our core. Because we can do things that in our life, that you and I can do things in our beings that we go, it's no big deal. It's just alcohol or it's just like a little bit of an addiction, but it's not a big deal. It won't affect my soul or my spirit. Those belong to God, but I can do stuff on the outside of me. And the problem is that when we root things inside of us, even if it's just things like carelessness with our life, that's going to mean careless, don't worry. It's shorthand for careless. These things happen to us, and then even though this is the core of who we are, this tends to be the way people might experience us. Have you ever met somebody you didn't like, and then somebody explained him to you and said, deep down, he's a really great guy? And you're like, yeah, if he was a really great guy, I wouldn't have to go deep down. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, deep down, everyone's a great guy. You know, it's like, but here's the deal is, when it's deep down, he's a really great guy, what you're experiencing is the stuff that's on the outside that starts to mess with the taste. You ever really like a person and you see awesome things about them, and then you get closer into their inner core, or you get closer into their inner self, and you go, well, there's bitterness here I don't want to actually mess with. There's something here that's just sadness. Or there's something in here that just seems to be like shame is what marks this person's like existence. Or there's something about this that I don't want to become this. You ever done that? You're like, I like the outer circle, but the further I move to the center, the more uncomfortable I get. But then it gets even worse, because sometimes we make choices that actually affect the image of God in our life. Other times, those choices are made for us. Other times, people make decisions that actually break us and cause us to distrust, or they cause us to protect ourselves because they did it to us. So you can't exactly maybe blame yourself and go, oh, well, this is a choice I made. This is a choice I'm making to actually hide the image of God in me. But when I watch a person that I love give their life away to people and then get destroyed, I start to go, maybe that's not the way to roll. Or when I watch a person be trusting and then get hurt, maybe that's not the way I ought to operate. Or when I watch a person love, when I watch a person be open, when I watch a person be whole and then split apart by all that, maybe I can start protecting myself from my life. It's possible that in some cases, what is given to us or what we choose actually deflects the image of God in our life, and so it becomes harder and harder to see in each other. See, what the scriptures are describing is that you and I bear the image of God and are entrusted with that image. It is given to us to be entrusted with it, and so we become responsible not only for what it is in us, but for projecting it to the world around us. How much more awesome would it be if you could just tap into the best parts of you and go, that's the world I want to live in my life. I don't want to live into the instincts I have to be bitter or the instincts I have to be greedy or the instincts I have to be selfish. I want to live in the best part of who I am. Oh, wouldn't it be awesome if you could go, man, all these things that happen to me, all these things that I carry, all these things that are behind me, if I could just sort of shed those, I might be able to actually live out of my best self. What if I was never afraid? Or what if I wasn't hurt? Or what if I wasn't broken? If you could get to that space, see, it's this dilemma is why Jesus came to the planet. It's this dilemma why Jesus stepped into human history, because as a people, as human beings, we broke the image of God in us. We polluted it so much, with a shorthand for that would just be sin. Whether it's sin that somebody else did to us or it's sin we choose in our own life, that sin polluted all of our pure image of God in our life. So when Jesus stepped into human history and gave us the capacity to connect to him and have him wash those things off, you and I got a renewed second chance to have the image of God be the first thing people see in us, so that when they interact with you or they interact with me, they go, God is on them. Have you ever met somebody that you felt like it was like you could feel their spiritual life? And I don't mean that in like a dramatic way. I mean, literally, you could feel them being like a spiritual person. I was at a fashion week like 4 years ago. It was crazy. It was one of the worst fashion shows I've ever done in New York, and everybody's going crazy. People are literally getting fired in front of me, tearing radios off their head and throwing them to the ground. I mean, it was like a total time bomb. But they'd spent like $750,000 on the show, so they're like, the show goes on, the show goes on. The designer's freaking out. He's literally leaned over, heaving, crying, like they're trying to calm him down to come out and wave afterwards. It was like a total nightmare. I'm taking photos and doing all the photos I can and like just getting what I want, and I had this thought. I may not be here for professional reasons, although that's what I'm being paid to be here for. Maybe I'm here for a different reason. Maybe I'm actually here because I'm going to bring something that's intangible to this space. So I just thought, I'm going to bring peace here. Because I feel like everyone in the whole room just needs. So I just started praying as I was walking around taking photographs. And I know that sounds odd. Just started praying and still taking the photos that I needed. And then as I stood along the wall and just let people eat each other, this woman named Mariah with a headset on comes running over to me and she goes, you. And I'm like, oh, good. Here I am trying to stay out of trouble. And she said, you're a God person, aren't you? And I just said, shh. which I thought would be funny to her, but it super weirded her out. It was not like a funny thing or like a moment. We didn't high five afterwards. And she just said, because you're the only one in this whole room that's not losing their head. So she goes, you have a peace that is not because of this room. And she goes, I'm a spiritual person. And I was like, I can tell, you know? And I said, shh, no, I didn't. Like, don't tell people that, you know? And she goes, I'm a spiritual person. And she goes, and I can sense that in you. You know, I just feel like with your life and with my life, it's not like it's not a cliche to say that when you connect to God, your life can be transformed. It's not like a religious practice to say that when you connect to Jesus, your life can come new. What becomes new in you is that the image of God that he created in you gets to shine through amidst all the other stuff. But the problem is we actually get lied to and we get like a loaded, wrong, and broken view of how to manage these things in our life called sin. Instead of connecting to Jesus and allowing Jesus to remove the effects of these things in our life and choosing life and choosing Christ, we get sold on this hogwash called religion. And that might sound odd to some people who are like, aren't we in a religious space? Isn't this a religious conversation? In some ways, yeah, it can be called that or categorized that. But religion, in its purest sense of a description for what Jesus described of people, is a lie that gets sold to you and me that somehow the more sincerely you hate yourself, the more sincere you are about your commitment to God. That if you can actually find a way in yourself to hate this part of you and hate this part of you and just be proud of this part of you, it'll work. And the way that you do that is you actually carry the burden of all that stuff and the burden of like, maybe it's self-hatred for some people. Maybe it's just, I'm just going to work really hard to be good. So what happens is instead of like living in a full and whole world, we actually carry this weight. We hook to ourselves the power and the force of things like religion, and we just say, I'm going to take on this big burden, and I'm going to just move forward in my life. I'm going to be good. I'm going to be awesome. That part of me that sucks, I'm going to hate it. The things about me that I don't like or that I wish weren't there, I'm going to hate them. And then every so often I'll unhook myself, do the things that I hate, but then I'm going to hate them later, and that's going to prove that I'm sincere. And have you ever met a person who said they found religion or they felt religious or they seemed so sincere, but they felt shackled to you and they did not feel free? A person who felt burdened. It was Jesus who said, those religious teachers are laying burdens on you and they don't lift a finger. They're laying things on you that are heavy. You need to try harder to be good. You need to try harder to not do bad things. You need to try harder to be the things you wish you were. You need to try harder to let the image of God go, and you need to try harder to forget all those bad things to happen to you, and try harder to do that stuff. Oh, and if you have like a bad weekend or a weird weekend, just hate it later. Unhook yourself a little and go for a ride, and then do so, and hook yourself back on and go, I'm sincere, I mean it. But have you ever been that person? And you watch people running free, and you go, man, if I just wasn't tethered to this, imagine the life I'd have. If I wasn't hooked onto this, or if I didn't believe this stuff, man, I would have like an awesome New Year's Eve. I'd have like a really cool life. If I wasn't hooked onto these old commitments or this thing that I inherited or all this stuff, I could live like the life I really want. Or man, sometimes I'm just tethered by like old school stuff. Maybe none of this stuff is really real, and so we just sort of like lump onto this. But if you're here and any of this stuff has resonated with something someone told you, I want to be really clear. This is not the way of Jesus. He did not step into human history so that he could hook ropes to you and you could carry religion through the rest of your life, so that you could carry burdens and weights and the heavy load of trying to become what God wanted you to be. Instead, Jesus says, come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. That you could unhook yourself from the rubbish of religion and actually connect to Jesus. And when doing so, you don't try to get all this stuff off of you and get this stuff in you. You actually allow the image of God that's inside you and me to come to life. You allow the image of God that's a part of you and me to be the visceral experience people have of you, that people have of me, from the core part of you to the soul that they experience, to your being of how you dress and act and behave and live your physical life. And the way that Jesus describes this is by calling these things out in you and me, inviting us to use them as tools, inviting us to use these as a way of moving forward in our life. Go with me to Matthew chapter 22. In Matthew chapter 22, verse 34, it says, the word Pharisee and the word Sadducee would be best described as like religious people. So we'll just call them that. Now, when the religious people heard that he had silenced the other religious people, they assembled together. And one of them, an expert in religious things, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which commandment of the law is the greatest? Jesus said to him, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your mind. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. Jesus is describing, going back to a Genesis 1 and 2 creation narrative of how you and I were formed. That you and I were created with these three tiers inside of us from the depths of our experience. And that Jesus is saying the greatest commandment, the way to renew the image of God in you is to connect to Jesus. And then the commandment, of how to act and how to live and how to do this and have this come to life in you is to actually love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. We'll put strength in here too. And then he goes on to say, and this is the first and greatest commandment. The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus is connecting that the image of God in you is indistinguishable from the way that you treat other people. The image of God in you, your ability to actually have what is best about you, that God created in you, come to life and be the way people experience of you, is indistinguishable from how you treat other human beings. From your ability to actually connect and love your neighbor. And that word neighbor is so annoying because it's not love the people you like the most. It's like love the people who are closest to you, your neighbor. So it's not like love people who are handsome like you and cool like you and fun like you. It's love your neighbor as yourself. That when you connect to this will be so contagious that even people who live near you will want to be connected to it. Not only are you and I entrusted with the image of God, but we are entrusted with helping the image of God be reflected in other people. That not only we would actually use our image to actually help and serve other human beings, but we'd actually connect to other people and help their image grow brighter. So you might be here and you go, man, my image is alive and well. Thanks very much. Your task, our task, becomes to help the image of God come to life in other people. That you and I actually begin to look at people like this. Imagine how that would change the way that you see people who annoy you, or people that you're bitter towards, or people that you're angry towards, or people that you love. That the image of God lives in them. That the image of God exists in them, or maybe even people that you use. I think sometimes it gets confusing. That our being are like physical things. Our soul is like an experience, and our spirit is what's deepest and core inside of us. But if we think, man, I'm just going to interact with the beings of other people, of other humans. A good example would be sex. Everybody say sex. I just thought that would like wake you up in case you were like not sure what was going on. Sex would be like an experience that a lot of people would go, that's our humanities connecting. And sex is awesome. I think sometimes in spiritual circles you go, man, oh geez, here comes the sex talk, you know? It's like, sex is amazing. God made it and it's spectacular, huh? Okay, great. So sex is a tremendous thing, it really is. But here's the thing. If we think that sex is just a physical thing, that our beings connect to other human beings, and it's just a physical thing, we're lying to ourselves and forgetting that when you allow another person into different circles of your soul and your life through the vortex of sex, we will do damage to ourselves we won't figure out until later. That if we think, oh, this is just human being stuff, this is just my nefesh, making other nefesh with other nefeshes, you know what I mean? Like, it's just cool, man. We're doing this together. It's just fun. It's a weekend, so it's cool. But if we don't realize that our human beings connecting to other people's souls and spirits connected through things like sex, through things like conversation and relationship, we are actually interacting with the image of God in other people. So the task not only becomes take care of people, be wise with how we treat people and how we interact with people, but the conversation also becomes, how do you spot that in other people and help that grow brighter in them? How do you and I actually spot the spirit and the image of God in other people and help that become brighter? That becomes our task. Have you ever had somebody say something about you that called out something in you and you go, wasn't even sure that was true. I didn't even know if I could believe that or not. We used to do this, we had a birthday party or a birthday dinner with a couple couples last night, and we used to do this thing with my group of friends where the person whose birthday it was would go around and give life advice to every person at the table. About a couple birthdays in, that started getting weird, okay? That stopped being cool about 2 birthdays in, so we changed it. Now, if it's your birthday, and this went last night, and it was Jen's birthday, and she said what she loved about every person around the table. And I was listening going, yeah, those things are like obvious, super obvious about all those people. But is it possible that when we say those things about each other and seeing beautiful and extraordinary things in each other, that when you speak them, you give them a power that the other person gets to hold on to? It's obvious to you, but it may not be to them, and they may not realize that it's part of what they're working towards to having the image of God shine in their life. Look, the reality is, I'm never going to play basketball like Blake Griffin, okay? I've come to grips with that. It was like 4 days ago, but I came to grips with it, okay? I love basketball. It's amazing. My DNA is never going to be prepared to actually play basketball like Blake Griffin. It's just not in the cards. Even if Kobe is 100 years old, and I work from now to when we're both 100 years old, I won't be able to beat him in basketball. It's not in the cards. Like, it's not a part of my DNA. But you and I are created, and the people around you are created with this viscerally pressed into their DNA, that God wove you and he wove them in your mother's womb. And when you were born with this as a part of who you are. And that when you're experiencing all the worst parts of each other, when you're experiencing things that make you hate people, when you're experiencing things that make you go, I never want to be around that person is so annoying, that person is so frustrating, everything about them is wrong, you're experiencing all the things that they added to the outside of it, but the image of God is still there. So if you're ever in a position where you have the opportunity to hurt somebody because of these things, don't forget that it's going to pierce through and hurt the image of who God is in them. So you and I have an important task. We have an important opportunity that God entrusted us with his image. And so how you and I behave, we got to lean into what it is to love God with the image that he has given us. To love God, there's a couple of things that you could do. You might be here and you go, man, what does it even mean to like love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength? How does that work? The first thing would be you just need to get to know who God is. Get to learn who Jesus is. If you have a copy of the scriptures or if you can download it on your iPhone, you should read through the 4 Gospels and learn who Jesus is so that you know the things that Jesus would do are the things that the image of God is you're already hardwired to do. You're not strapping on the weight of, now I got to start doing this stuff. It will become natural for you the more you go, this is a part of my DNA, a part of who I am. You're not trying to play basketball like Blake Griffin. That's religion. That's hooking it on going, you just better try the rest of your life. You're actually leaning into who you were created to be. You can begin to read the scriptures. You can begin to connect here at Mosaic in a community group and go, I just want to learn more about who God is because I'm going to love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. You can begin to serve. Find spaces, find people to love your neighbor as yourself, just to serve people. It could be a person close to you. It could be a person near you. You could start small. Start with the people you like. Let's go with the easiest entry level here. If you go, man, I'm not serving people and I'm not like generous and I don't give a lot and I'm not all these things, I'm not even patient with people. Start being patient with the people you like. Start with your wife. If you like her. Start with like a person that you like. And then translate it so that you could begin to grow this inside you because it's a part of you, not because you're adding it to your life. So that you and I, when people interact with us, they go, I experience the image of God. They go, it's God that's on you. You're a God person. Not because of a set of rules or a set of behaviors or because of how badly you hate the things that you know you shouldn't do, but because of how sincerely you hold the image of God in you and in the people around you. My prayer for us in 2013 is that we would begin to be people that look like God. We look like the image of God all over the place. And we have the ability to spot it in other people and call it forward in them. If you're raising children, if you have kids and you're raising children, doesn't it seem kind of odd that a kid is not given to you as a blank slate? Wouldn't it be fun if a kid was given to you as like a blank slate and you could draw the things, I want them to be left-handed, be nice if they were taller, here let's just stretch them out like they were an iPad app or something. But my daughter, Cora, is now 8 months old. I think I have a photo of Cora somewhere here. Daughter Cora is 8 months old. Isn't she cute? That's just not even fair for me to show a kid that cute, is it? Okay? She's 8 months old, but she's not a blank slate. She hates sleep. We did not sign up for that, right? She feels about sleep the way I feel about drowning, which is like, I don't ever want to be in that position. Do you know what I mean? But she came to us not as a blank slate. She came to us as like a bundle of seeds. And we're just watching things about her grow. We're watching personality erupt. We're watching life happen. If you have kids or you have people you want to call something out of, call out of them the image of God that you see in their life. Spot them and catch them doing extraordinary things and go, I want you to know that your joy can light up a whole room. I don't know if you know this, but you have the ability to bring life to people around you. You change the texture of a room. Do you know that? Do you know that there are people who avoid difficult conversations and you step into them because of your kindness and gentleness with that person? Do you know that there's people who will avoid difficult tasks because it will cost them something and you move straight for it? You do things other people shirk away from. You hide from hard work. Other people hide from hard work, but you're a workhorse. Spotting those things in human beings, and it is the ability for you to blow wind on their fire and allow the image of God to come to life in them. That's my hope for you and me for 2013. That our image would explode, that you and I would have the ability to call that out in other people. So that as people around us grow, as our community around us grows, we could actually become more like what God imagined us to be. That we could actually begin to look more and more like him. Let's pray together. God, we thank you so much that your image was impressed in our spirit and in our soul and in our beings. That right now in this room, we carry among us your image. And that no matter where we are on our spiritual journey, God, I know that there are people here who are exploring, people who are searching, people who are looking for answers about who you are. God, I pray that you would just reveal yourself to them in their DNA, in the core of their spirit, in the core of their soul, that you rest in them. And in a search for you, they will find themselves. God, I thank you so much that you have entrusted us with your image. It's a scary thing to give us the ability to reflect who you are, which, frankly, is probably why so many people distrust you, because of actions of people who claimed your name. I pray that you would bring healing to those people through our life in this room. I pray that every person in this room would have a 2013 where we grow closer and closer to who you are, closer and closer to the way that you look, closer and closer to knowing who you are and loving us, loving you with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving each other in a way that honors you in each person. God, we thank you so much for the opportunity to be in a world that you hold so dear, to be the people you hold so dear. I pray that you would help us to be the kind of people who, through our image of you, make you proud. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.